Hi and welcome to the Miss RX Geek channel. If you have not yet subscribed, please hit the subscribe button to see more videos that I do in the future. So today we will be talking about how to get into pharmacy school. This will be the second video that's part of my pharmacy series for October, which is American Pharmacists Month. And I'll be talking generally about how to get into pharmacy school in North America. So stay tuned. So when it comes to applying to pharmacy schools in North America, you can't get into pharmacy school straight out of high school. You do require some undergraduate prerequisites. And these prerequisites generally consist of physical sciences and some social sciences as well. The prerequisites in general can usually take people at least 2 years up to 4 years, but it really depends on the program you apply to. Some schools, if you can get it done in at least 2 years, you can apply to their program. But however, there are some schools out there that do require that you have a bachelor's degree before you even apply. So it's good to keep that in mind when you're planning. Now, when it comes to prerequisites, some can differ between different programs, but there is generally a common form of prerequisites that are required by each pharmacy school. And this usually includes, when it comes to the physical sciences, a general chemistry 1 and 2, also biology 1 and 2, and usually these do have to come with labs, also organic chemistry 1 and 2 with labs, also microbiology, statistics, and calculus. When it comes to the social sciences, usually economics is required and also some form of public speaking or speech course, especially if you're applying to pharmacy schools in the United States. As you know, as a pharmacist, it's important that we know how to communicate to our patients to convey important information, hence why they do require a speech or public speaking course. It's also good to keep in mind that when it comes to these prerequisite courses, some schools might have some requirements that you can't score lower than a B for those required prerequisite courses. So although there might be a minimum GPA that's required to even apply, some of them might also have some specific requirements for those prerequisite courses that you can't score lower than a B, C, or D. So it's really important to check the requirements of a school that you're applying to see if it works in your favor. So when it comes to GPA, it really depends per school, but most of the time you require at least a minimum overall GPA of 2.5. There are some schools that will bump it up and say you need a minimum of 3. Some might say a minimum of a 3.2. So it's also important to look at this and see how that fits with your situation and if you are competitive applying to that program. So when you apply, you have to go through a program called PharmCAS. And what PharmCAS is that it's like a centralized application service that you can use to help apply to several PharmD programs within the country. You can only use this when you're applying to schools in the US. Canada doesn't have PharmCAS. And through this program, pretty much, because it's centralized, you can have your references, send references there, and also your transcripts, and this will be distributed to the respective pharmacy schools that you are applying to. Now, when it comes to applying to pharmacy schools, always keep in mind cost, because the more pharmacy schools you do apply to, the more expensive it gets. So when it comes to PharmCAS, and if you're only applying to one school, the price starts out at $175. Now, with every school that you apply to after that, the price does increase. So I believe once you're applying to 2 schools, the price increases to $230, and so on. So it's important to keep in mind what your budget is and how many schools you can apply to. Now, when you're applying to pharmacy schools in the States, most schools do require what we call a PCAT, which is kind of like an exam like MCAT that you need in order to apply to med school. So the PCAT is like the MCAT, but it's related to pharmacy. And this is what you need to write in order to get into pharmacy school in the US. Now, there are some pharmacy schools that don't require it. So if you have taken a PCAT and you don't feel very confident in it, try to look at other schools that don't necessarily require a PCAT. Now, when you do a PCAT, some schools might say that you need a minimum of a 20%. You have to score within the top 20% or at least the top 80%. It really depends on the school. But usually when there is a minimum, most people that are applying are way above the minimum. So it's important to keep that in mind when you are applying. So while we are on the topic of different pharmacy schools to apply to, it's important to keep certain factors in mind, such as cost, location, accreditation, and whether they have a dual degree. So for instance, for location, it's important to consider how far are you willing to go. Are you willing to move far? Do you want to go to a place that has warmer weather? You have to weigh those things in mind. Also cost, because there are some private and there are also some public schools. And also if you're going to a different state for pharmacy school, there might be an out-of-state tuition fee for you. So it's really important to keep that in mind. Usually private schools are more expensive than public. It's also good to look at class size. So some programs might have larger class sizes while some might have smaller. So whichever place you feel you will learn better in, it's important to weigh that when it comes to applying to a pharmacy school. Also accreditation. In order to get your license, you do have to graduate from an ACPE accredited school. So make sure the schools you are applying to are accredited, or hopefully will be accredited soon. But it's safe to just apply to an accredited school. It's also good to keep in mind programs that offer dual degrees. So not only would you graduate with a PharmD, you could also graduate with an MBA. And this will look great on your CV. And it's also good if you're interested in the business aspect of pharmacy. So one thing I forgot to mention with PCAT, when I studied for PCAT, I used 2 books. I got the Kaplan book and also the Princeton Review. However, I will tell you, Kaplan wasn't very helpful. I found the Princeton Review to be very helpful to me. Now, one tip of advice I will give to you when you do start undergrad and university, really try to understand the material, especially in your general chemistry courses, organic chem, biology, so on and so forth, because these are concepts you will be tested on in the PCAT, especially math, reading comprehension, and more. So definitely take those English classes, science classes very seriously. So far we've talked about GPA, prerequisite courses, and the PCAT, what to score, what to keep in mind, but there's a lot more that goes into getting into pharmacy school, and this includes experience and extracurricular activities. So it's really good if you can try to get involved in volunteering at a pharmacy, even working as a pharmacy, maybe as a technician, or even just volunteering at a hospital. Just getting some form of healthcare experience will really help, and it'll help you stand out on your application and also when you go in for interviews. Definitely some form of work experience that you can speak upon. I also highly recommend getting some experience with a pharmacist. I feel it's important to know what you're getting into before you do apply, and this will help you see if you truly really want pharmacy. So I do highly recommend at least shadowing a pharmacist if you can. Also, community service is really important, and also doing extracurricular activities outside of school. Pharmacy schools want to see a well-rounded student because pharmacy school is quite intense, it's very busy, and you have to be able to balance a whole bunch of things at the same time. So they are looking for the well-rounded student. So they want to see someone who has good grades, has scored well on their PCAT, is also involved in other things apart from school, and has also been involved in the community. So definitely try to look at these things and see if you're lacking in some areas. It definitely helps to help strengthen it and improve in those areas if you are lacking. So far we've talked about GPA, prerequisites, PCAT, and what you need, but there's a lot more that goes into trying to get into pharmacy school. This includes letters of reference. Usually schools require 3 letters of references, so make sure you go to 3 people that you trust that can write a positive letter of recommendation for you and can speak on your strengths and also on your academic ability. So once you complete everything through PharmCast, and the next step would be hopefully an interview from the schools. Now, interviews are big, and I feel like another video is needed to talk about interviews. So if you would like to see me talk about pharmacy school interviews and how to ace an interview, definitely give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see that you would love to see that video, and I will make one for you guys. So if there's anything that you take away from this video, it's that try to be a well-rounded student. Try to not only be good in your academics, but also in other things, in your extracurriculars, and also being involved in the community. It's really important to just sacrifice some time during undergrad to just be able to do well especially in those prerequisite courses and boost up your GPA. It is competitive to get into pharmacy school, so it's really important to keep on top of your grades and also your classes and plan it out accordingly. So that is all I have today for how to get into pharmacy school. If you do have any questions or comments, please leave them down below and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Definitely stay tuned for my next video where I'll be talking about how pharmacy school is for those who are curious and maybe worried about the course load and how hard it might be. Thank you, and that's all I have for today. See you in the next one.